You're listening to Whispers of War. Hello everyone and welcome to show 41 of Whispers of War. I'm your host Sil. My week in WoW, let's start with that. It's not been very eventful. I'm still, slowly chipping away on that rep for the Colterans. And I am on 82% right now, so I need to find something for the last 18%. I guess I will have to start googling to see if there's a faster way of doing this. Maybe I need to run some dungeons or something like that, because I'm not very lucky with the missions for your little followers, unfortunately. Other than that, I started leveling a baby dwarf hunter, not because I don't have a hunter, I actually have two, but I want the heritage gear for the dwarf, and I don't really want a race change, and it's nice to start something that's very low level, and I haven't done the dwarf starting area or basically everything around Casmodan in like forever. So yeah, before classic launches, I thought why not get a little bit familiar again with those areas, and then see how everything is in classic again. So that is really all I've been doing this week. I think if some of you have followed me on Twitter, you know that I had a death in the family. My gran died yesterday, so I'm a little bit... a little bit is an understatement. I'm not in the best of moods, but I didn't want to wait a week with the podcast. Also because I know that next week my WoW time will be very limited, because I will be in Holland for the funeral, and I guess the silver lining is that I will see my family again, which is really nice. So, every cloud has a silver lining, but I not in the best of states. But anyhow, I do want to thank you all for your kind words, because so many of you have reached out via Twitter, and I really appreciate it, and you guys are absolutely the fucking best. I couldn't wish for any more amazing friends or listeners. So yeah, you guys are pretty amazing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the interview here, and I will come back with some stuff that you guys said about expansion packs and races and stuff for after the interview. I will have to warn you a little bit. The interview, to begin with, it starts off okay, and then the sound quality gets a little bit crackly. It's not unbearable. It gets a little bit bad at I think the 7-minute mark or 5-minute mark, but it only lasts for a few minutes. And when I say a few minutes, I'm like 10. I think it's about 10 minutes or a little bit less. After that, we reconnected, me and James, and the sound quality was amazing. I tried my best to clean that first bit up, but yeah, Audacity was not having it. So bear with. Maybe you need to skip a little bit, but it's not too bad. I could still listen to it, and I'm hoping that you guys can as well. But I'm promising you it will get better after like 10 minutes. So yeah, do enjoy the interview. It was really cool talking to James, and I will see you on the flip side. And with me today, I am joined by a very interesting voice, because it's very British in my ears, but does not live in Britain, but lives over the pond. So welcome, James.
Hi, Sil. How are you? It's a pleasure to be here today.
I'm very good. I'm very honored to have you.
Thank you.
So, for those at home, can you tell who James is, what James does?
Yeah, I mean, you sort of introed me well. I grew up in England, so too many years ago for me to even mention now. But since 2002, I've lived on the west coast of America in Southern California, and enjoying all the weather here and the odd earthquake every now and then. But yeah, I live out here now, and I work in the video game industry and play a lot of video games, and live here with my fiance and my two dogs, and yeah, it's a world away from where I grew up, to be honest. But it's obviously good enough for me to stay for 17 years, and I have no plans for leaving just yet.
You know what? 17 years, that is quite a big, I would almost call it like an in-game achievement.
What an in-game achievement. I like that. I've lived here almost as long as I had lived in the UK. I was 22 when I moved, so another 5 years and I would have been here a little longer than I had been in the UK.
Wow. As a fellow immigrant, I can say that time just really flies, doesn't it? And all of a sudden you're like, oh, actually I've lived there longer than I lived in my country of birth.
It really does. It's funny because I remember some friends of mine celebrated with me when I had lived here for 1 year to the day. And I remember that very clearly. And all the years since then just seem to have blended together and gone by. Every year goes by a little faster. Age or time dilation or what?
I think it has to do with age, so all of a sudden it just goes too quick.
Yeah, seems that way.
Yeah. Okay, so video industry, really cool. But you also do some stuff on the interwebs, don't you?
I do, yeah. I have a podcast that my fiance and I launched earlier this year. Actually, nothing to do with video games, nothing to do with World of Warcraft. It's sort of more of like a human life experience type podcast.
Oh, wow.
Well, my fiance and I, we met through World of Warcraft. And when we were getting to know each other, we realized we actually have a lot more in common than just the video games we play. And one of the things we have in common is that we were both raised in fundamentally religious environments, which in the US, she's from rural Pennsylvania, I'm from rural Oxfordshire. Now in the US, maybe it's not so unusual to be raised in a religious environment, but in the UK, when I was growing up, it was pretty unusual. And so to have that connection is one thing, but we both since then have left and transitioned away from the sort of fundamental religions that we were raised with. And very recently launched a podcast talking about that experience and sort of the struggle of rewinding childhood indoctrination and how that affects our life as adults, and so on and so forth. So we just, we're 4 or 5 shows in now, and it's been really cool. We found a small community that is slowly and steadily growing, and it's been a great way for us to connect with other people who have gone through similar experiences. So yeah, that's sort of my main contribution to the wealth of the internet these days.
That's still really cool. What's your podcast called?
It's called Unbelievable, and it can be found at www.thisisunbelievable.net.
I think that's definitely one to check out, because yeah, that's could be really, really intense, I think, with those subjects.
Yeah, we try to keep it relatable and lighthearted, but you know, it's almost unavoidable when you're talking about something like that to hit home with some really deep issues and deep subjects. So yeah, like I said, nothing to do with anything else I do in life or podcasts like this, but it's something that we enjoy doing, and it's sort of a major part of what I do online these days.
Okay, well, that's very important, I think. So let's go back to World of Warcraft then, because you know it is a World of Warcraft podcast. So my main question for now: Horde or Alliance?
Loktar Ogar, I am Horde through and through. Cut me open and I bleed red, not because blood is red, but because I have the Horde pulsing through my veins.
Okay, Horde, very good. Why? Why did you go for Horde?
That's an excellent question. It actually goes all the way back to, believe it or not, it goes back to Command and Conquer. I don't know if you ever played that game back in the day.
I have not, but I've seen it.
Yeah, so I, in my teens, I think I must have been maybe, I'm going to guess 15 or 16 when the original Command and Conquer game was released. And I was playing a couple of different real-time strategy games, but Command and Conquer was the first one. You know, you had the two sides, the GDI and the Nod, and the game sort of painted the Nod as the bad guys, but you could play the game from their perspective. And I played both sides of that game, and I recognized that the Nod storyline and character development was a little richer than anything on the GDI side. So then when I picked up Warcraft, Orcs and Humans, I just sort of gravitated towards what appeared to be sort of the bad guys, the darker side of it, right? And of course, I argue against that philosophy now, but I played the Orc campaign first and continued that through Warcraft 2, Warcraft 3, and then when World of Warcraft was released in 2004, I just naturally rolled an Orc, and bar 2 years, well, about 18 months, where I was playing Alliance, I've been Horde ever since.
Okay, so what made you play Alliance for a little bit?
That was a social thing. I had some, I was in search of a guild, a raiding guild, and I had some friends that invited me over, but they were Alliance side, and they were pretty progressive. This was during Wrath of the Lich King, and so I did a faction change with my Beastmaster Hunter back then, and raided for about it's about 18 months, maybe a little more, just shy of 2 years as Alliance. I was a dwarf hunter, and then faction changed back for Cataclysm because the guild disbanded.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. So what's, you said that you started with the first games, the RTSs. How did you start your love for World of Warcraft? What really made you feel like passionate about the game?
Yeah, I think I think that really started in Warcraft 3. Throne was the storytelling through the Warcraft universe had just gotten broader and deeper and richer over those 3 titles plus expansions. And I caught wind of World of Warcraft when a friend of mine who I worked with, he knew that I was a Warcraft 3 player, and he came into work one day and he said, "Hey, have you seen this new thing that Blizzard are doing?" This is before it was released. He said, "Have you seen this thing that Blizzard are doing? I'm in the beta." And I hadn't really been following Blizzard news for a while. And I said, what are they doing? He said, well, they're calling it World of Warcraft, and it's like a super zoomed in Warcraft 3, and you get to run around and control like just one character, and then you get to customize your character and sort of fight with other people all online. And I had played a little bit of Dark Age of Camelot. I played a little bit of EverQuest Online. And so I had a base understanding of MMOs, but then when I went round to my friend's house and he showed me the WoW beta, and I got to play for 15-20 minutes, I was just hooked. The gameplay, the questing system, I'm very much looking forward to reliving all of this as Classic comes out later this year. Everything about it just seemed to be mind-blowing to me. It was so much bigger, so much broader than anything in the Warcraft universe up until then, but also weirdly familiar. And so I rolled an Orc Hunter. Actually, first I rolled an Orc Warrior, but I didn't understand. I mean, this is how much of a noob I am when I start playing. I did not understand durability, and so after my weapon was damaged at level 2 and I couldn't fight anymore and I didn't know why, I just sort of re-rolled. And I re-rolled a Hunter and figured the durability thing out very quickly. And so stayed with it. And I think the familiarity of knowing some characters that have been introduced in prior titles in the Warcraft universe sort of kept me very interested in knowing where was the storyline going and where were Blizzard taking this universe. And this was before there was any endgame stuff, but names like Thrall and Jaina and Arthas, they were still very much present in that universe. And being able to interact personally with some of these characters, it just spoke to me, fascinated me, and I was hooked very, very quickly. Poured many, many, many hours into it over the first 3 expansions. But I can't remember a time since WoW has been around that I haven't been extremely fond of it. Even times when I've taken a break through, busy life or other things that have taken my focus, I've always gone back to WoW as sort of one of my main video games, and I play it today just as much as I ever have. Nice.
That's really, really cool. Have you switched a lot with different classes in your time in the game?
A handful of times. I was a hunter main for the first 6 years, and I never even rolled an alt until towards the end of Wrath of the Lich King. There was a relatively long period of no new content and nothing new to do, so at that point rolled a rogue and decided to level a rogue. It was an undead rogue, and slowly leveled that up. I think that we were probably towards the end of Cataclysm by the time I had hit max level on that rogue. And that rogue actually now, I did a race change several years ago, is now a female goblin rogue. And that rogue is now my main. I haven't mained as a hunter since Warlords of Draenor. So I've been playing rogue now for 3 or 4 years. I had a mage. I played mage through Mists of Pandaria. I've also got varying levels of paladins and priests and warriors. So I've definitely checked out other classes, but never really seriously. I'm not like an achievement completionist or anything, so I don't care about having a whole bunch of max level alts. But yeah, I would say between my hunter and my rogue, I think those I would class as my 2 mains, and then a fair amount of time in my mage back in Mists as well.
Okay, well, this is going to be interesting because now that Classic is scheduled to come out, do you have any interest in playing Classic again to relive what it was like in the beginning, or are you like, nah, I'm too happy with the current retail version?
I do have interest. I've actually been lucky enough to be included in the beta, so I've probably got less than 2 hours played in it currently. But that is mostly because I tend not to play betas very much. I prefer not to spoil the final product for myself. So what's interesting for me is I've been playing through some of the early classic content. I rolled a rogue and never played a rogue back in Classic, and it's completely different to how it is today. So in that regard, I'm very much looking forward to relearning my main class as it used to be. And there is also surprisingly some stronger sort of sentiment and stronger memories that I have sort of been triggered as I've logged into beta. Like, oh gosh, yeah, I remember now how old Orgrimmar used to look. And I remember how the old quest rolls used to unfurl, and life without quest giver. I mean, your guests on the last episode, on episode 39, talked a little bit about, there's no add-ons in Classic beta right now, and so sort of triggering those memories of, oh gosh, yeah, this is how you used to have to quest. This was, leveling up weapons and leveling up skills, and having to min-max your stats to be effective once you hit max level. I am looking forward to that grind again. If for no other reason than the same feeling that I get when I look through an old photo album of something that I did 15 years ago, just to relive it a little bit. And the other reason is my fiance, she did not play World of Warcraft back during vanilla days. I believe it was Mists of Pandaria when she joined the World of Warcraft community. And so it'd be her first exposure to the old content as it was back then. And so I'm looking forward to playing through some of that content with her as well. And a handful of people from the guild we're in are going to do the same. And so I'm looking forward to that, sort of putting a small group of classic leveling tunes together and playing through that content. So yeah, various reasons why, but I am looking forward to WoW Classic.
Cool. Yeah, there will be such a like new world basically for people to discover with, the old quests that are completely pre-kata, so nothing is revamped. That's going to be such an experience. I always envy people who will experience it for the first time.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there will be something special. It's either going to go one or two ways. I think there will be some players that will just almost be in disbelief at the difference between modern day World of Warcraft and classic World of Warcraft, and be sort of pleasantly enchanted and enthralled by that. And I think there will also be some players who I think might tire of how difficult because it was pretty hard to play back then. I mean, I remember tuning for Molten Core. I remember having to gather mats for various things, and even trying to organize a 5-man dungeon when you didn't have enough guildies on, let alone a 40-man raid. I mean, these were very difficult things to do. Yeah, I think that sentiment is going to go it's going to be quite binary on it. I think people are going to love it or people will avoid it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right there. But there's, at least then there's, if they don't like it, there's always retail again that people can start playing if they want to, experience it the way that they're used to, maybe.
Yeah, and I think from that regards, I think that current modern World of Warcraft is the best that it's been in years. I think BFA is a fantastic expansion, and I'm certainly enjoying the game more than I have in a good number of years as well. So I think there is something there for everybody in World of Warcraft as it stands, either classic or modern WoW.
Yeah, definitely. No, I agree with that. Okay, so maybe we should just jump into the topics that you selected. Shall we start with your most favorite expansion pack? Because I'm curious now which one was the most favorite for you.
Yeah, so Wrath of the Lich King for me was one of those expansions. Blizzard did a smart thing when they released that as their second expansion, because Burning Crusade had taken us off of Azeroth into what was essentially an alien world. We were seeing alien races, we were seeing very strange creatures, and it sort of set up some great mechanics within the game. But since playing Warcraft 3 Frozen Throne, I had been sort of hoping that Blizzard would revisit the Arthas Menethil storyline. I had really enjoyed playing the Frozen Throne expansion, and so when I heard that we were going to go back and further that storyline, I was very, very excited. And so then when coming out of Outlands and back to Azeroth, it felt like coming home. And I mean, I remember the day that expansion dropped, waiting in Orgrimmar, getting on the Zeppelin, heading to Northrend for the first time. It was just so exciting. And as I began that questing experience and consuming that Wrath of the Lich King storyline, it all felt very connected, very well written. Everything that I was doing in every zone was intricately and intrinsically furthering the storyline. From every little side quest and all the dungeons, it was leading to this moment that we all knew was coming, where we would get to confront the Lich King in Icecrown Citadel. And the journey to get there, I think, was super, super engaging. Blizzard did some really cool things in terms of game mechanics in that expansion as well. I think the talent tree changes for Wrath were really enjoyable and fantastic. And that certainly helped with the engagement piece. But for me, the storytelling in Wrath still resonates with me today. And I love it because Arthas is one of the most broadly and deeply written characters in all of the Warcraft universe. His origins are wholesome and good. His relationship with Jaina Proudmoore, his relationship with his sister Kalia, his history with Lordaeron, and then the story of his corruption and his fall. That had been well documented and written, but to be able to play through that in the Caverns of Time, to set that stage of the initial confrontation at Wrathgate, and then the ultimate fight at the top of Icecrown Citadel by the Frozen Throne. All of that is something that I had been longing for, and just have, even today when I go back, I'm still trying to get Arthas to drop Invincible's Reigns for me. So I still go back from time to time, and I will solo my way through Icecrown, and it evokes all of the good memories that I had of that time, and I can still just stop what I'm doing and look around those dungeons and look around those raids and just be in awe of the level of excellence and the detail that was put into every little nook and cranny of that expansion. And I think that it set the standard for everything that Blizzard has done since, for as far as World of Warcraft goes. And so, yeah, Wrath, I think it's going to be really hard for me to ever come a day where I say that Wrath isn't my favorite expansion, because it's my favorite in so many ways. The characters, the story. Northrend is such a fascinating continent. I think the Borean Tundra is just beautiful as a zone. I still love going back there. Fond memories of mining around Sholazar Basin, and with my hunter trying to go and capture Loknahar, the first spirit beast that Beastmasters could have. Just, those kinds of things. I've got many good memories. So I have to keep Wrath of the Lich King as my favorite expansion.
You know what? I think you make a very good point of why it's your favorite. And in all fairness, thinking back about it, because I always went like, oh no, vanilla was always. I actually might have to agree with you about Wrath the more that I think about it, because I feel like the pacing of opening the wings and how we basically worked towards going to Icecrown Citadel and having the Argent tournament and all those things, it just seemed there was always something to do, and you never felt like it was rushed. You never felt like you waited forever for something to right. pop up. There was always like, oh well, yeah, I think we're about to, but they are now saying that we're getting something in another 2 weeks.
Yeah,
and it just felt right.
It was done in a way as well that wasn't overwhelming. One thing that I struggle with some other MMOs that I've tried and played a little bit is that, you know, you log in and there's so much to do that you just don't know where to start with, or I don't know where to start with it. And I'm kind of a linear video game player. I prefer sort of single player campaign type games. And so when there's no clear linear path, I really struggle with it. And Wrath of the Lich King sort of bridged that gap so well in that there was so much to do. There was always something there, but there was also a clear path that you could take. The game guided me as a player through that content really well. Even through things like, I mean, you mentioned the Argent tournament, the way that led into the Argent tournament. I'm trying to think of the name of the raid that came out of that, the Grand Tournament. No, that's wrong. Whatever it was. You know, you had the 5-man dungeon before that, and before the 5-man dungeon was the jousting tournament to get the rep up with each faction. And it sort of guided you through this natural progression that when you look back at it and go, man, I just consumed so much content and I did so much. And I was playing a lot, but none of it ever felt grindy. None of it ever felt overwhelming. It was really only towards the end of the expansion. There was, I think, a good 6 to 9 months with nothing new after the Ruby Sanctum was put in game. You know, so I that's when I rolled my alt rogue and stuff like that. But all the way up until then, I mean, there was 2 years of just good, solid gameplay and storytelling and things for me to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I always like reminiscing about the older packs.
Isn't it great? I'm gonna log in later and go and run Icecrown.
I need to do it now. I'm wondering how many people listen to this and go like, you know what? I need to go and try now for Invincible and just, you know, appreciate Icecrown Citadel for what it is.
Yeah, funny side story, not related to Wrath, but during that time, I used to, on a weekly basis, go and run through Zolgarub to try and get the Zulian Tiger mount to drop. Very, very rare. And so I ran that for a week. Ran that for a year, pretty much every week. And the one time that I saw it drop, I had taken a friend. It was the only time I ever took a friend with me. We completed the final fight. The tiger dropped, and I got outrolled for it.
Oh no!
I know, and like, of course, then it got taken out of game because my thought was, well, if it's dropped once, it'll drop again for me, and it never dropped again for me. So, yes, I'm going to keep going with Icecrown until I get Impulse Reigns to drop for me. I feel like I have to avenge that Zolgarub moment.
I think you have to. At least you have, you know, Classic coming back, so you have your shot again.
Yeah, I can't wait.
But except that you have like 40 other people.
It's true, yeah.
So that's the downside of it. Okay, so I think, you know, also just thinking back of Wrath, I think that's also when we really saw, and this is going to, it wasn't really the Cold Tyran model, but when we got humans that were different postures.
Right.
So yeah, I think Wrath was a very, very interesting, almost like progressive expansion.
It was also the expansion pack in which Blizzard introduced the first hero class with the Death Knight. And I think that was that was an interesting new dimension to the game as well, that, you know, you had to have a max level before you could roll a Death Knight, and then you roll a Death Knight and you start at level 55. I think that was a very interesting new thing to introduce to a game that for 4 years by that point had been, you know, you roll and start at level 1 and you want to get max level, you've got to go consume the content, you know. And having that hero class so tightly intertwined with the main thematic content of the expansion, I think was a brilliant way of making players feel connected with the Scourge invasion, with the rebellion against that Scourge invasion, and with the uniting of the two factions against King Arthas.
Yeah, absolutely. It was so interesting, and must have been difficult for Blizzard also, because all of a sudden they have a new class, you know, then they have 2 other expansion packs where that class can also play in, having things like gear, you have to rethink about all of that, and just the balance. And I remember a lot of guildies re-rolling Death Knight because they were kind of powerful back then.
I mean, I rolled one just to check out the starting experience, and actually reminded me, I went, I'm trying to think what spec I rolled. I want to say I went Frost, because it reminded me of the Necromancer from Diablo 2. And since playing a Necromancer in Diablo 3, after Blizzard brought that back, I think my intuitions were right about that. I just thought it was, it's just brilliant. It was a brilliant first hero class, and maybe I'll go and revisit rolling a Death Knight. Just as well. Oh man, there's so much for me to see and do.
So much to see and do. Well, that's a good thing, again, that the game still has that kind of grip on people, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, there's a reason why, multiple reasons, I'm sure, why World of Warcraft is still popular. I mean, this video game turns 15 years old this year, and here we are still making podcasts about it, you know? I would be impressed to find another game that is as old as Warcraft has been around, where there's still such a large, passionate community engagement about it.
Absolutely. And I mean, you know, it has its own convention that still draws in so many people, because how many people aren't out there just whining that they can't get tickets and everything like that? So, you know, they're doing something right, which just, to me, I hate people who always go poo-poo about it, because unfortunately I'm also on a lot of like Facebook groups that are Warcraft related, and you always see at least one post a day of someone who has to announce, I am leaving the game. I don't know why you need to announce it, but people do. You know, I'm like, well, you're posting it on a place where there are people who are playing the game. Why would they care that you're leaving, you know? But I just think, even though the people who are negative don't outweigh with how many people are still enjoying the game so to the max. And now, especially with Classic coming on the horizon, I think it is very, and I don't know if you've seen any of them, but I find it very interesting to see all these YouTubers who went like, oh yeah, I don't really play the game anymore, it's not fun for me, but then they go like, well fine, I'll try Classic, I'm sure it's not great. They've tried the beta, and you can see them having so much fun, and they're actually making videos about how they didn't expect this and how they're enjoying it again. I think it's a brilliant thing to have 2 different games.
It's what
for the people.
I was gonna say, it's wonderful seeing people get hooked again. I was watching some Twitch streams the week that Blizzard first sort of released the beta to, I think it must have been quite a small group of people and some influencers and streamers, and to see World of Warcraft Classic knock Fortnite off the #1 position on Twitch, it's remarkable to see that, when you consider a lot of the sentiment that, you're right, some personalities on streaming platforms have not been resistant, but just, I don't know, seemed a little disinterested until they played it. And it's like I was just mentioning, sort of tugs on those heartstrings a little bit, tugs on that sentiment, and all of a sudden you're hooked again. There's actually a couple of people in the guild that my fiance and I are in who they've taken a break from WoW for, I mean, anywhere between 6 months to a couple of years, and have seen Classic Beta, and because of Classic Beta have resubbed. And not only are they resubbed for Classic, but they're leveling through Battle for Azeroth as well and consuming and enjoying that content. So it's really interesting to see the sort of knock-on effect. And it just blows my mind that a game this old is still fresh and still being updated, still popular. And yes, you're right, there are those in these various online groups that will announce to the world when they're leaving whatever it is they're interested in. But for all of that, it seems that there's people discovering it for the first time or coming back and rediscovering it. And I just see a lot of joy in that. I mean, that even just to witness that is a feel-good moment for me.
Yeah, I bet. And I think all of us in the community have that. As soon as we get someone new in who's like so enthusiastic about everything that they are experiencing for the first time, it actually makes you really enthusiastic about things again. You're like, oh really? Oh, I want to try that. Yeah, that's a good, maybe I should try and revisit that again. I just love seeing people getting really, really enthusiastic when they see something for the first time.
Yeah, it's going to be a trip to see friends of mine and to see my fiance discover things about the classic World of Warcraft that they've never seen. I'm looking forward to seeing and hearing those reactions.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. All right, so the other one that you were quite interested in talking about, and I'm quite curious now if Wrath of the Lich King is your favorite expansion pack, was your favorite race. So what would you pick if you'd have to go, okay, this is the only thing that I want to see in game? Which one would it be?
So this is where I create a little bit of cognitive dissonance for everyone listening, because while Wrath of the Lich King is my favorite expansion, it's actually the goblins that are my favorite race.
Kata content.
Kata content, yeah. I can't really explain why, because I don't know, but when I like watch or read or engage in any sort of geeky content that is set in these sort of fantastical fictional worlds, I develop almost an affinity for the small kind of rascally type characters. I think about I mean, of course, Lord of the Rings, the hobbits are small anyway, but there's sort of, there's a couple of the hobbits that are sort of swindlers. They're just, they're good-hearted, but they might try and rip you off one way or another. There's something about that I find so endearing. Or in Harry Potter, I just love Dobby. I think that's a sort of like, I don't know, slightly creepy, slightly adorable type of character. And so the goblins, when I found out that they were going to be a playable race in Kata, I was like, I have to play a goblin. Questing around the world for so long, all these interactions with the Steamweedle cartel and the Bilgewater cartel, and all these sort of various subgroups of goblins, I'd always wanted to play one, and I'd always wanted to, like, if I could be in the game, I would want to be one. And so I think there is something about, outside of me also loving technology and things that explode in real life, I think that, looking at goblins, there's just something, I have an affinity with this race. I mean, they have some of the strangest, weirdest, funnest technology. I know goblins do too, but we can't talk about gnomes. I mean, I know gnomes do as well, but I'm not going to talk about gnomes because they're the wrong faction. Yeah, I mean, it's all slightly corrupted by their love of money and these little car salesman lines that they'll throw out about, time is money, friend. And I think that the way that the trade prince Gallywix sort of negotiated the Bilgewater cartel's involvement with the Horde, and the way he got involved in the propagation of Azurite and the mining of Azurite for Azeroth. It's so comedic and so brilliant and so funny. So yeah, my rogue I mentioned earlier is a goblin. Faction changed her the moment that I could from being undead to being a goblin, and yeah, I love it. And there's actually a small group of goblins that when we in my guild, that when we down a boss, you know, we always stand together when we take the group picture, the group screenshot. There's always like 3 or 4 goblins right there at the front. And yeah, I find their storyline fascinating as well. I mean, people don't tend to look at them because they're not sort of like one of the core. They're not humans. They're not orcs. They're not dead. They're not one of those sort of like core influential races that has pushed the storyline in World of Warcraft so much further. But they have a lot of history when you really get into the lore of where they came from, and you know, their prior primitive sort of existence in the forest around Ulduar, their connection to Meklo and Neltharion. It all starts to come together where you realize that there's a lot of depth to Goblin history. And I mean, I would love to see a Goblin-based expansion sometime in the future. I think that would be absolutely brilliant, and I would consume that 24 hours a day. But seeing that sort of Goblin, I know it's just the Bilgewater cartel, and that there are these other sub-factions of goblins that aren't playable and aren't really involved in the storyline. But seeing how the Bilgewater cartel have, you know, joined the Horde and terraformed parts of Ashara and sort of put their mark on the world, put their mark on Azeroth, and now become a very active part, certainly through this sort of creepy, you're not really quite sure if you can trust him character in Gallywix. But, you know, I play on an RP server, so I kind of like to think of my goblin as having a slightly kinder and more altruistic backstory, while maintaining some of those, you know, not quite sure, they might rip you off. They're gonna ultimately do good, but how they get there might be a little bit questionable. I kind of like that aspect. It's almost like they're almost like the unspoken politicians that you kind of got to vote for them, but nobody really likes them, you know.
Yeah, no, I know exactly how that is, because this is really funny, because I used to have a goblin priest.
Okay.
And I played her a bit like you know, one of those television evangelists that you have, like, for the right amount of money, I can save your soul, and I can make sure that you get the healing that you need. And you know, it was all about the money,
right,
and the haggling. But I think goblins at the moment, we get them in some of the stories. I was really happy to see a goblin and a gnome together in Before the Storm.
Isn't that beautiful?
I think a lot of people wanted to see something similar like that,
yeah,
and I was so happy to get something like that back in game. And I just thought, we need more of this, more about, you know, because I think it just shows that goblins, not all of them just like Callywix. So, you know, like with any faction, there's opposers and people who are for their faction leader.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so much more that we actually don't know about goblins, and you're absolutely right. We should. I would actually really want to see an expansion just featuring them.
I mean, we think back to Warcraft 1, 2, and 3. Goblin units were available. I think it was Warcraft 3 that had the Alchemist. That was quite a powerful unit that I used to play with. Even in World of Warcraft, it was the orcs who hired the goblins almost as sort of tech consultants, so to speak, to create Orgrimmar. So, like, there's the history of goblins is interwoven into so many parts of WoW's core story and the places that we visit and the structures that we interact with, that they just, it's almost like they're the second level forgotten species that without them the progression of the Horde wouldn't have been where it's at today. And even just some of the crazy tech they have. I mean, I remember I can't even remember the name of it. They had these giant turtles in Warcraft 2 that basically ate enemy ships. They were like steam-driven turtles, but they were actual real turtles. They were just sort of like turbocharged. And like, it's just ingenious, dumb, awesome technology that little green creatures just have a knack for. And so, yeah, I think that there is so much that Blizzard could do with goblins in terms of future storytelling and, all the kinds of fun that, even if it was a gnomes versus goblins expansion like they did in Hearthstone a few years ago, that was one of my absolute favorite card packs. Some of the hilarious mechanics that came with that, brilliant art. I think that goblins, I mean, I might start a campaign on this. Goblins need an expansion.
I think that, I think you get some backing with that. Are you looking forward to the graphic updates to the Worgen and the Goblin models?
I am, yeah. I think that, anything that adds a little more detail, a little more customization, a little more realism, I'm all for that. I like to feel like my character is unique and sort of one of a kind. And especially playing on an RP server, I'm not heavy into RP, but there are elements of that I quite enjoy since I moved over there. And like I think that those sort of like model updates just help reinvigorate interest in things like transmog as well, and trying to find the right outfit to go with the right face and the right skin tone and the right sort of aesthetic and look for your character. I think that when they come, I'm going to be I'm going to spend a lot of time in the barbershop.
I think it's in the beginning, it's always a little bit like, is that my character? Because I would like, when it happened and I was still playing my night elf, I looked at her and I went like, is that your face now?
Right.
Okay.
It's like they've grown up.
Yeah, exactly. And then, then later on you get used to it. And then you go back to classic and you're like,
oh boy,
wait a minute. This was not the face I wanted. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to seeing. I mean, for me personally, the Worgen females, I'm just so looking forward to their faces just being changed. But I think the Goblin females, because I actually, this is quite bizarre. I wanted to roll a Goblin female this week because I thought, just in case heirloom gear comes out for them, I can say, well, from 1 to 120 and all good for that. And then I had to pick a face and I thought, I'm not really loving the faces as much as I did with the newer races.
Right. Yeah.
And I was just like, I think I will wait until the update.
Yeah, I do recall. So my rogue is female. Her name is Stabriella, which I actually wanted Stabrina. But that name was taken, so I went with Stabriella. That was years ago now, and she'll never be anything but Stabby now. But I do remember agonizing over sort of like it's the face, ears, and piercings combo. For me, I did spend some time getting that just how I wanted it to be. I'm very pleased with it now, but I'd like to see how she looks when the new models are rendered.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be very, very curious. I mean, I can make a okay face, but you want your character to be that you're like, yeah, this is my character now.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so we've already talked a little bit about Battle for Azeroth. If you had to pick what you're most impressed with and what you're least impressed with, what would that be?
I'll do least impressed first.
Okay.
Weapon drop rates for rogue. I have seen. So I'm an outlaw rogue. So I, in my mind, should have swords. I'm essentially a pirate. I have had axes drop for me. I have had fist weapons drop for me. I've had maces drop for me. I've had exactly one sword drop. And it's like stats wise, it's fine. Like I'm getting weapons that, give me good output with my damage. But I just thank goodness for transmog is all I can say. The fact that I can transmog an axe and a fist weapon to look like two swords, it is, yeah. I've just been frustrated with that. However, it's such a minor frustration when I compare to what I love about the storyline. I think that there's been something simmering for a couple of expansions now about where have these landmark characters gone and what have they been doing while we've been off fighting dragons and partnering up with Illidan and liberating pandas, fighting against a big bad orc. Where's everyone been? What have they been doing? And so jumping into an expansion here where suddenly, I mean, let's talk about the alliance side of the story on its own. You've got a young, inexperienced, very brand new king in Anduin. You've got this sort of, in my mind, hyper aggressive but wise mentor in Gen Greymane. And here comes Jaina, who is finally ready to address and confront her past with her mother and her family and recognize that the power of the Kultirans could potentially turn the war in Alliance's favor. The way that storyline has played out, and I actually, I'm a Horde main, but I have rolled a rogue on the Alliance side just to see the storyline, because I don't recall a time when all my Alliance friends have been so excited about how rich this storyline and playing through it has been for them. And so I started, and the whole jailbreak opening with Jaina for the Alliance opening, it just felt engaging. And so seeing these characters come back, and then on the Horde side, we've got Varrock Sauerfang, who hasn't really been that much of a prominent character in a while. As we saw in a very recent cinematic, Thrall is back in the picture. Varrock Sauerfang's gone out somewhere, found him in the middle of nowhere. There's Thrall basically being a farmer these days, and has convinced him to come back and join the fight against a character in Sylvanas that many of us, me included, have loved for many years. And again, knew she had this sort of banshee, angry side to her. Her history with Arthas and her place as the Queen of the Forsaken, super rich, and it's all being sort of turned upside down and spun on its head right now. And for that to be happening with all these characters and core characters that we've known for so long, and it's causing all kinds of new relationships to break down, new relationships to be spun up between these characters and with these characters, seeing the interaction between Varrock and Anduin when Anduin left the jail door open for him, fantastic. Seeing the interactions between Sylvanas and Bane Bloodhoof, whereas before they had been very cooperative, now there's very clear tension. It's just some of the cleverest, deepest, richest storytelling that I've seen in a WoW expansion, certainly since Wrath of the Lich King, and it might surpass Wrath of the Lich King.
Yeah, there's a lot of tension there. I almost sometimes feel like it's a little bit like watching a drama TV series, and you're like, what's going to happen next?
Right. And to go so long in that drama, and yeah, I mean, you go along, you're happy with the storyline, but for them to get to a point where some things really start to come together and some stuff really starts to get answered, it's just such an exciting moment in any sort of. It's like the last 2 hours of Return of the King in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Like, yeah, you've enjoyed these movies, but you knew that war was coming, and you knew that the journey to Mordor was going to come to an end one day. And so seeing some of these conclusive parts occur with some really key characters, bringing Thrall back, Sylvanas turning into something that's very vengeful, Jaina having moments of redemption with her family and with her original race. It's blowing my mind what Christy Golden and Taryn Gregory and the creative writers at Blizzard have done to reinvigorate a world that was already very vigorous and very dynamic and had a lot of vitality to it, and they've just taken it up a whole new level, a whole new notch. That is absolutely the most impressive thing about BFA. I know must be getting close to patch 8.2 being released here now, and I'm very, very excited to see where that storyline is taken.
Yeah, absolutely. So am I. I think, I hear it from everyone who I ask, what is the one thing that you really, really enjoy? And so many people say the story and just seeing where it goes. So I think the writing has been absolutely brilliant. It's really engaging. Okay, so do you have any good tips, or a tip? You don't have to give more. If for the listeners, regarding Battle for Azeroth. So this could be something very simple of, I hear a lot of people say, oh, take your time for the game, don't rush, or, it could be anything, or maybe something you've discovered in the game.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of specific things that I could talk about that contrast with Legion. I found the follower missions in Legion to be a little bit annoying. The fact that some of the content was gated behind levels of my followers in Legion. I sort of went into Battle for Azeroth with the intention of engaging in some of like the war campaign and the mission table stuff very purposefully. And I would say that players should do that. Not because there's content that is really gated. There's a couple of gates in there that are reputation based, but the war campaign on the Horde side, you interact with Nathanos. I don't know who you interact with on the Alliance side because I haven't played that yet. But play the war campaign stuff. Do those quests. Follow those storylines. It enriches every other part of the game. Yes, your quest lines are going to take you through the various zones as you level up, and you're going to be gathering Azerite here and taking down foes there, and I think that that's all very important. But the war campaign, personally, for me, enriched all of that, and the mission table I've found to be extremely rewarding because it's doing things like buffing my my reputation with the various factions, or it's bringing me Azerite power for my Heart of Azeroth, or it's just straight up bringing me gold, which is always good. So I think be purposeful about engaging with those elements of the game. And the other part, and I know this is not for everybody, I have never traditionally been a PvPer in World of Warcraft, but I switched war mode on last August. I very, very recently turned it off, like 2 weeks ago, just because I was getting ganked trying to complete some quests and I got annoyed. But this is Battle for Azeroth, and there is something exciting about showing up to a part of the world and stumbling upon 20 Alliance players and 20 Horde players just going at it and just having a brawl in the middle of the world, and coming back for more. And everyone there is just trying to quest, they're trying to gather Azerite, or they're trying to do something. But a small battle has broken out. And for me, that's an exciting thing to be a part of. I've not done World PvP since vanilla. So to have that back again was really exciting. Plus, you do get your plus 10% reward on all of your quests and your world quests. So there's a little bit of motivation there for it too. But yeah, I think specific tips I know, but if there's anyone jumping in, those elements become very obvious quite quickly. And I think that they will enrich your gameplay experience.
I think that's always really good. I think, you have people who are very hesitant to put on anything that has to do with PvP, but I've heard from so many people that agree that war mode has just changed the way of how they play the game and how much more fun it is for a lot of people.
Right. It really has, yeah. And it has for me as well. I've certainly rediscovered some enthusiasm that I had for that part of the game as well.
Yeah, I think also that kind of part, I don't know if you have that, but, with rogues in vanilla, I remember Strangleformville on a PvP server.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just a bit like, okay, so this is now the area that we're all meeting, and stunlock,
Yeah.
as soon as you try to to hand in a quest.
Or the fights for the treasure cache in Gurubashi Arena. That weekly fight was good as well.
I think, you know, it's in the end it's only pixels. You know, you can respawn your character, so but it gives you a little bit of sense of extra, I don't know, danger, and just being aware of, like, was it a rogue sound that I heard?
Right.
Why are there so many corpses here? What's going on?
Right. Something's happened here.
Yeah, exactly. Should I really be careful now? That it just, it makes the game a bit more exciting, I would say.
I agree.
That's a really good tip. Okay, now this is always an interesting question. What has the Warcraft community meant to you?
Oh, I could go on for a long time about this. I mean, the Warcraft community, I've always been a bit of a nerd, bit of a geek. I was the guy in school who wasn't particularly good at sports. I never had any game with the girls. I wasn't particularly academic, but I loved computer games. I loved video games. And until World of Warcraft and until the social aspects became really solidified, I always felt like a little bit of an outsider. And the community, to me, all of my best friends, I've met through the Warcraft community. My fiance, I have met through the Warcraft. We met through World of Warcraft. We were in the same guild, it has brought an incredible amount of joy to my life in meeting so many different people from so many parts of the world and so many different backgrounds, races, religions, creeds, whatever, and to know that we've all got this one thing in common that unites us and bonds us. And I love that there was a thing that Mike Morhaime said in his BlizzCon opening speech. I think it was BlizzCon 2017, I think it was. He said, in the Blizzard community, there are no strangers, just friends you haven't met yet. And I find that sentiment not only to be correct and to be true, but to be incredibly reflective of how I view the Blizzard community and the World of Warcraft community. Sil, you and I haven't interacted particularly often on Twitter or in Warcraft circles, yet here I am having a chat with you like an old friend. And there's something powerful about this community that is unsaid and unwritten and often unrecognized, that brings people together for so many good causes, not just BlizzCon, not just these events, but I see Warcraft guilds and friends rallying around when something bad happens to someone else in their guild in a completely different part of the world and doing something good. I see stories of families being reunited through Warcraft. I see stories of servicemen and women who are deployed being able to have interactions with their family in-game playing World of Warcraft. So I think there is something about this that sort of transcends the human experience and becomes greater than the sum of its parts. It means the world to me to be a part of that, and I cherish, for as long as it is a thing and as long as it is available, I want to be connected and be a part of it, and continue to meet so many awesome people and get to experience moments like this. I think it just does so much good for our little piece of the world.
Oh, that's so beautifully spoken. I really like that.
Thank you.
No, I think you sum it up. It does give you that sense of that belonging immediately, and that you can so easily talk to people about, the same passion that you share. And I think that's a really nice way of saying it.
Yeah, I was out in Texas about a month ago, visiting a friend of mine who I met through World of Warcraft, and he and I are really good friends now. He and his wife and his kids, great friends of myself and my fiance, and we went out there it was a completely non-gaming related reason for us to visit. We were just going to visit and had a few days out there, and I was sat in a bar by the hotel we were staying at, and I was wearing, this isn't necessarily Warcraft related, but I was actually wearing an Overwatch t-shirt, and I walk into the bar, and the bartender, we were in Temple, Texas. It's in the middle of nowhere. But the bartender took one look at my shirt and went, "You're an Overwatch player. I'm buying you your first beer." And if that doesn't encompass what Mike was saying about the Blizzard community. I mean, this guy didn't know me. I didn't know who he was, but we immediately had a connection and we had a great conversation then. It was a Mercy shirt that I was wearing, and he happened to be a Mercy main. And so we just, those moments happen. And what other mechanism would unite me with a random bartender in a tiny Buffalo Wild Wings bar in the middle of nowhere in Texas, right? This crazy English kid who lives on the other side of the world. Just these strange things happen as part of the Warcraft and the wider Blizzard community. It's just so endearing. It's just so wonderful.
Yeah, I bet. And I mean, I've seen it here that what was it? I think there was a local convention, and it was just a Comic-Con kind of convention here, and it was really small for where I'm from.
Right.
And I saw people out in town who were dressed as Overwatch characters, and you immediately feel that, like, I know exactly who that is, because my boyfriend doesn't play any of the Blizzard games. He's seen me play Overwatch on the console now and again, and I think, what was his reaction? He said, "Oh, you're really good at this," and I thought, that's because I'm level 1 and I've played this on the computer, so I know what I'm doing. And it's just, and I immediately was to him like, "Oh, look, that's that character and that's that character." Yeah. And yeah, I don't know, it does make you feel part of something that's, you're part of a community, and I think that sense of belonging is just so important. Yeah. And I have not really seen that with many. I think the other big one that I would see that with is probably Final Fantasy.
Yeah, I think that, but I mean, that's also got its sort of a subculture and community that crosses borders and boundaries and sort of unites people all over the world around this one thing. I think that's an astute observation to say, yeah, around these other things, Final Fantasy, even outside of gaming, the love for what Marvel have done with the Marvel universe and the movies, and all kinds of opportunities like that just bring people from all over the world together around one thing and create this new community, this sort of like new citizenship that we have.
Yeah, I think it's an amazing time to be a geek, in all honesty.
I agree.
Okay, and now it's the question that is a bit weird. So this is the question of what is your whisper? Now, for those who are like, what the hell is a whisper? I always joke that it's a gimmick gone wrong, really, but we're just, I should have scrapped this question like probably after like the second episode, but here it still is. So I've now just dubbed it into anything that you want to say. So any theory crafting, tinfoil hat, a wish, or just an observation about World of Warcraft, anything that you want to spout out.
Yeah,
it's yours.
I would say this: World of Warcraft as a game is very rich, very broad, very deep, and you can have extremely fulfilling experiences only playing that game. However, there is a ton of extra content out there that is not part of the game. There are books, there's the movie, there are comics, there's all kinds of fan fiction out there on the internet set in World of Warcraft. I have found that as I have consumed some of that content, it has exponentially heightened my enjoyment of World of Warcraft. And so I just want to put that recommendation out there. The Chronicles, the Warcraft Chronicles books that Blizzard have published are absolutely fantastic resources for learning about characters and places and history. And while you're reading the book, being able to go to those places in the world and see it and experience as you're reading about it. I loved the audiobook of Christy Golden's Before the Storm. Listening to that while playing the game increased my enjoyment of it. And so I highly recommend break out of the game and enjoy all this sort of like extra additional material that there is that enriches that game experience further. I think it's just a brilliant thing to do to enjoy your game even more.
No, I agree. I absolutely agree. I think I stumbled upon the anthology, I think it is. I'm trying to find it in my bookcase. I'm looking behind me, but I can't find it. I think it was a big bundle of short stories, and that was the first time I actually read a book about Warcraft. And it really pulled me, because that was in the time of vanilla, and it really pulled me into the game even more, because I was like, oh, well, who's this person then? And what are they? Where are they in the game? And it just really enriches everything. It makes it so much more like tangible almost.
Right. I mean, you mentioned earlier about the relationship between Grizzix Fizzwrench and Saffronetta Flivers, the goblin and the gnome, and like that doesn't appear in. I mean, it does appear in the game, but you never know the history of that. That story is told in Before the Storm, and it's such a beautiful story. I mean, it's a real sort of Romeo and Juliet without the death, kind of story that, man, just reading that got me excited to jump back in the game and, go and check out Shimmering Flats and the Mirage Raceway again and see where Grizzix would, in that world has set up home and is, is plying his trade there now. And like, it's just extra dimensions and moments in the game that, have helped me enjoy that enriched experience a bit more.
Absolutely. And I mean, look, even at was it Cata that it happened that they changed? Was it UBRS with Leroy Jenkins?
Yes. Yeah. It was,
that was even like a that was even like a YouTube thing. Yeah. And then to give that a nod to in-game, but so many people go, yeah, I've seen that video. Yeah. I know exactly who that character, and it's just extra stuff, isn't it?
I would also say, play Hearthstone. Hearthstone, I think, is an excellent little addition. I mean, I'm not a trading card game player. I've played Magic the Gathering, I think, exactly twice, and never really got it. Never really captivated by it. I know there are people out there that are. It's just not my thing. But Hearthstone, it's just fun seeing a card with. I don't know, with Thrall or Saurfang on it, and you play that, or the Leroy Jenkins card that when you play it yells Leroy Jenkins, and when he dies says, "At least I had chicken." Like it's just funny and fun, and sort of creates all these little dot-to-dot connections around and within and over and under the game that I think is brilliant.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. That's I want to hear people write in now and go like, oh yeah, I read this book now and I really want to know where this character is, or especially the Chronicles, like you mentioned, They just give you, the world is just taking so much more shape, especially with what's going on now.
Yes, I think the next couple of years in the World of Warcraft are going to be pivotal for shaping the future of the universe, and I'm very, very excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, I think we all are. Okay, well, James, thank you so much for this interview. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been an honor to chat with you.
It's lovely talking to you. If people want to find out more about you and everything that you do, where can they find you on the internet?
I am on Twitter. I am at English Guy there. And also the same on Instagram, at English Guy. Happy to be followed and to follow back. And then, like I mentioned earlier, I have my podcast for those inclined to listen to that kind of content, www.thisisunbelievable.net. And I also co-host a stream with my girlfriend, Missy, my fiance, I should say, Missy. We're very recently engaged.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We stream our guild's raid every Friday evening. It's 8 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And that is at twitch.tv/EnglishGuy07.
Nice. And I'm sure that people will sort of follow because, like I said, I really like hearing your voice because it's nice to hear an English accent again.
Thank you.
But thank you so much for being a guest.
It's been wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
So I hope you guys enjoyed that interview. It was lovely talking to James. And I'm not going to read all the tweets about the expansion pack and the best race. I'm going to keep one topic for next week. And I'm just going to reply with all the tweets that you tweeted at me. Is that the word you're saying? Tweeted at me? For the best expansion pack. So this is what you guys said. Sai said, even though it's credited with the beginning of the downturn for WoW, Wrath of the Lich King will forever be my favorite X-Pack. It wrapped up the Warcraft 3 stories and I just loved Northrend. Aaron Wilbanks said, I really enjoyed differently themed areas of Legion, with each of the 5 different zones having unique storylines and feels to them. Alex C, as a Draenor darling, I love that name, the only expansions I've played are WoD, Legion and BFA. I think Legion was my favorite. The storylines, lore, regions, instances, etc. all just felt so epic. I also really enjoyed the idea of order halls and artifacts. Martin Terbraak said, I started in Pandaria, and after many hours in WoW, I feel like it's still my favorite expansion. The lead up to Siege of Orgrimmar, Timeless Owls and the Pet Battles tournaments, the Little Farm, good times. I know that a lot of people say that they love Pandaria. Exclavier. As a catababy, Mist still holds the most sway over my heart. The land, the mystery, the story, the music, and the occasional daily, but most of all, it's where I met the largest number of in-game friends and the CTR community. Many of those friends I still have today. Oh, that's really good. Tarly, hard to pick a favorite, honestly. I started in Wrath and obviously love it not only for nostalgia, but it was based on my favorite lore character. But really, after playing for 10 years, now I can look fondly back at each expansion and find reasons to love them, even WoD. Ball for the belated one. Pandaria brought me back after a long break. The colours and the themes were great. Peakel Satine, I hope I say that correct, or it could be Poikel Satine, said, Wrath is when I started playing and will always hold a special place, but Pandaria for me runs a good second. The Cranky Tank, I like that name, said, I may be weird, but I tend to think that my favorite is whichever expansion is current. Fresh content, QOL changes. Each expansion is an improvement on the last. Gwen Dark Iris said, Kata, because that's when my now husband bought me my own account. It's when I started putting more hours in it too. Chaotic Chio said, I started playing WoW again in Pandaria and loved it, but I also love Wrath because that's when I started, and I love Legion too, it's hard to pick one. Cheryl said, having just talked about this, I have a fondness for most of the expansions for various reasons. I think my favorite was Legion because there was a lot to do for both solo and group play. Chaotic Good Girl, Mist was my favorite, followed closely by Legion, mainly for how beautiful the zones were. Plaggy said, been playing since Burning Crusade and I have to say Legion was the best. That legendary gear system blew, but overall the expansion was just so compelling to me, both in story and gameplay. Russell Dempsey finally said, Wrath was my favorite, BC was cool. That's nice to hear that some people still enjoyed Burning Crusade. I think for me Burning Crusade was special because it was the first expansion pack that was out there, so it was something new. And yeah, I have a fondness for all of them. I think, all of them have given us something that made the game better. So even though some of them didn't end that well, I think most of them started off quite good. So that's it, people. Again, sorry if it sounded a little bit not as perky as normal. I tried my best, but I hope that with the circumstances you guys forgive me. Anyhow, thank you so much for listening, and if you want to be an amazing guest, I would love to talk to you. Just send me a tweet. You can do that on Twitter, of course, so at whispers_of_war. You can also find my personal one there, which is McMonkeys with a Z. You can email the podcast, whispersofwarpodcast@gmail.com, and if you want to find the other shows, go to whispersofwar.podbean.com, and Twitch will happen soon. I haven't had the time yet to really sit down and start doing everything. I need to create some new banners and things like that. So if you do want to follow me, I guess you could already throw me a follow there. It's twitch.tv/MuckMonkeys, but not 1 Z, but 2. And that's really it. So thank you so much, guys, for listening. I really appreciate it. And again, thank you so much for your kind words. It's really appreciated. And I will see you all next week. Bye-bye.
This show is brought to you by Dragon Powered Studio. Find more at dragonpoweredstudio.com.